everybody. Today we are going to be discussing saving biodiversity and the HalfEarth Project, and we will be interviewing and learning from Dr. Paula Ehrlich. HalfEarth is a call to protect half the land and half the sea in order to manage sufficient habitat to safeguard the bulk of biodiversity. Today we are honored to talk with Dr. Paula J. Ehrlich about how the HalfEarth Project is driving research, providing scientific leadership, and engaging with people everywhere to help achieve this important goal and solution for our planet. Do you want to be called Paula or Dr. Ehrlich? Paula.
Paula's fine, thank you.
Paula leads the HalfEarth Project and is the president and CEO of the E.O. Wilson Biodiversity Foundation, where she oversees the foundation's broad activities to foster a knowing stewardship of our world through biodiversity research and education initiatives that promote and inform worldwide protection of biodiversity. And I'm going to start by asking Paula some key questions here. So as I just mentioned, you lead the E.O. Wilson Biodiversity Foundation, named for one of the most acclaimed scientists of our time. Can you tell us about Dr. Wilson, how he came to be so passionate about his work, the contributions he's made to science over the years, and even beyond the scientific world?
Yeah, absolutely. And hello to everyone. Thanks for joining us. You know, when you lead the E.O. Wilson Biodiversity Foundation and people don't understand who E.O. Wilson is or what biodiversity is, you have a pretty steep curve to get up. But E.O. Wilson is extraordinary, especially for those who know him. He's generally recognized, as you mentioned, as one of the leading scientists in the world. He's currently honorary curator in entomology and university research professor emeritus at Harvard University. And he's also, of course, the E.O. Wilson Biodiversity Foundation's main man. He's chairman of our board of advisors, and he's chairman of our HalfEarth Council. And I can talk to you about, and I will talk to you about some amazing work he's done. But let me first say that the thing that I find that he's most famous for, in my eyes, is the way he's influenced our lives, both personally and philosophically. Over the course of his life, he's guided innumerable research and teaching careers and inspired the lives of really everyone who's read his books or heard him speak or worked with him or been his friend. I've stood next to him when he signed books at various events and heard many, many heartfelt stories of people who've been affected by him in extraordinary ways. As I mentioned, E.O. Wilson, Ed, is one of the foremost naturalists in both science and literature. He's a synthesizer of ideas, if you will, with works that stretch from pure biology all the way across to the social sciences and humanities. He's actually acknowledged as the creator of two scientific disciplines. One's island biogeography and sociobiology. Also three unifying concepts for science and the humanities jointly: biophilia, biodiversity studies, and consilience. And also one really major technological advance in the study of global biodiversity, the Encyclopedia of Life. He's received more than 100 awards, including the U.S. National Medal of Science, the Crawford Prize, which is the equivalent of the Nobel for Ecology, the International Prize of Biology of Japan, 2 Pulitzer Prizes in nonfiction, the Nonino and Sereno Prizes of Italy, and the Cosmos Prize of Japan. And for his work in conservation, he's received the Gold Medal of the Worldwide Fund for Nature and the Audubon Medal of the Audubon Society, and also National Geographic's prestigious Hubbard Medal. So he's quite an extraordinary man, and in many ways, sort of a prophet right now for how we think about and understand the environment and what we need to do to take care of it.
Thank you, Paula. So, Dr. Wilson is a prolific writer and author of the book called HalfEarth, Our Planet's Fight for Life from 2016, addressing the species extinction crisis. I'd like to run a short video here about HalfEarth, if I may. Thank you for your patience, everybody.
Threats to the natural world are multiplying. Species are going extinct at an alarming rate.
Unless we move quickly to protect global biodiversity, we will soon lose most of the species composing life on Earth.
But there's a solution. It's called HalfEarth. If we conserve half the land and sea, we can still safeguard the bulk of our planet's biodiversity. But what would HalfEarth look like? How do we get there? By mapping our planet's biodiversity in fine detail, and in relation to human activities, we can pinpoint the best places to conserve the maximum number of species. Mindful of our ever-changing world, we can identify wildlife corridors and other management solutions that can help sustain biodiversity. With the right information to guide effective conservation efforts, we have the opportunity to support the most biodiverse places in the world, as well as the people who call these paradises home. The HalfEarth Project is working to engage people everywhere in why these places are special and how they can best be managed to protect life on Earth. Through cutting-edge technology, we're mapping the magnificent global web of biodiversity with unprecedented resolution and providing scientific leadership and actionable guidance for conservation to achieve the goal of HalfEarth.
We can share this precious planet of ours. All life can prosper. It would be humanity's greatest achievement.
Can we really save half the Earth? Yes, we can if we want to.
So Paula, is Dr. Wilson really proposing to protect half the Earth for biodiversity? Why half, and how do we get there?
Yes, he is proposing to protect half the Earth, half the land and half the sea, in order to protect sufficient habitat to safeguard the bulk of biodiversity. The current extinction rate is about 1,000 times what it was before humans came along. And at this rate, it's estimated that we'll lose half our planet's species by the end of the century. What Ed has said is, and I quote, "Unless humanity learns a great deal more about global biodiversity and moves quickly to protect it, we'll soon lose most of the species composing life on Earth." And so in order to address this, we need a solution that's as big as the problem at hand. If we manage half the land and half the sea for conservation, we'll protect sufficient habitat to safeguard the bulk of biodiversity. Now, you asked why 1/2? Well, the crucial factor in the life and death of species is the amount of suitable habitat that's left to them. So as defined by the theory of island biogeography, a change in the area of a habitat results in a change in the sustainable number of species by approximately the 4th root. Now, remember that because there's a quiz. But the theory of island biogeography, really a theory developed back in the 50s by E.O. Wilson with a colleague as his, MacArthur, was able to define that relationship, which is really important, right? The area of habitat that results in a change in the sustainable number of species by approximately the 4th root. So as reserves grow in size, the diversity of life surviving within them also grows. And as reserves are reduced in area, the diversity within them declines to this mathematically predictable degree, swiftly, often immediately, and for a large fraction of species forever. So when 90% of habitat is removed, the number of species that can persist sustainably will descend to about 1/2. And that's actually the condition in many of the most species-rich localities around the world right now. So in those places, if 10% of the remaining natural habitat were then also removed, and you could imagine people coming in and clear cutting that kind of area of land in almost a day. If those places, if 10% of the remaining natural habitat were then also removed, most or all of the surviving resident species would just disappear. If, on the other hand, and this is important for HalfEarth, if we protect 1/2 the global surface, the fraction of species protected will be 85% or more. So at 1/2 and above, life on Earth enters a safe zone. If we achieve that goal, if we can protect 1/2, then we can relax. We'll have solved the problem. And so the idea here that E.O. Wilson was suggesting was to really raise our ambition, to imagine reaching a goal like a moonshot that, if we achieved it, would solve this extinction crisis problem we're currently facing and inevitably support our lives more sustainably.
Thank you. How do we get there?
Well, there's lots of different ways that we can, that we're currently working to get there. When E.O. Wilson wrote the book HalfEarth, he didn't prescribe exactly how it should occur. What he did was to try to create a campaign that raised our ambition from a process to a goal. That process has been somewhat successful in putting out fires here and there and protecting species, but we know that we haven't really, that this extinction rate continues to expand. In the book, Ed talks about how it's kind of like a surgeon that's operating on the operating table as patients bleeding. He's put out about 20% of the bleeding, and congratulations, the patient's dead in the morning. We're doing the same thing with the environment right now. We've maybe saved 20% of the species on the endangered species list, but unfortunately we have this extinction crisis. And so through the HalfEarth Project, what we're working to do is to convene people everywhere with whatever unique experience and expertise they may have in order to achieve this goal. The core of that is science and helping us to better understand our world so we know how to best protect it. But then there is a whole cultural movement that needs to be engaged and at the same time in order to drive the success of that and really answer all the questions that inevitably are asked in order to achieve this sort of goal. So we're working in many ways to drive that forward right now. sitting in a sort of a Apollo mission control room, if you will, trying to do the deep scientific analysis and provide scientific leadership around how to achieve the goal.
So Paula, could you talk about the term moonshot? It sounds like Dr. Wilson deliberately used that term to get to the goal that you just spoke of.
He did. Yeah. You know, many of Ed's kind of ultimately earth-shattering ideas and theories have initially met with skepticism before kind of ultimately being tested and wholeheartedly embraced, except for this one. It's being received really well. And sometimes Ed will say he was surprised by the warm reception that we received to HalfEarth, especially when he first began speaking about it to large gatherings of scientists, such as those at the big international IUCN meeting in Hawaii. But HalfEarth is a campaign that was introduced at the right moment, when many scientists were already coalescing around this target. And Ed offered a way for them to join together to work towards this goal. In some ways, it's surprising, right? Because this kind of scientific consensus is extraordinary. But his surprise is also an expression of his own humility. I think he's always imagined that, presented with a moonshot goal, we'd each together use our unique experience and expertise to drive conservation efforts to a new level. That this goal would elevate our nobler instincts and convene scientists and conservationists, well, people, to work together to protect the majority of species and our planet, sort of to move beyond a piecemeal process that's not been successful to an ambitious goal that will solve the problem. And he absolutely means to evoke and create a JFK-like moonshot, a grand goal that we would all work together to achieve. JFK said it this way. I don't know if you remember when he talked about the moonshot, but he said, we choose to go to the moon, not because it's easy, but because it's hard. Because it's a goal that will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills, and because it's a challenge, and because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept and one that we're unwilling to postpone. And that's really the moment that we find ourselves in now. In the epigraph to the book HalfEarth, E.O. Wilson quotes Virgil, who said, and I quote, "But now we have come a great long way, and now the time has come to unyoke our steaming horses." And it's just a really powerful way to really bring to mind all of the extraordinary energy, scientific know-how that we now have at our fingertips that we can bring together in a moonshot sort of mindset to drive towards this goal and solution.
Beautiful. So given the scale of the species decline crisis and its implications for the future of life on Earth, it is critical, as you have said, for people to act quickly to achieve the goals of the HalfEarth Project. So in previous communications with me, you outlined 3 factors or 3 areas of influence. One is technological advances, the other is the deep science, and the third is the indispensable insights of indigenous peoples. So Paula, you reflected that all the work combined is critical to understanding our world and caring for ourselves and our planet. Please explain.
Well, I think we're at an extraordinary moment. If you think across the arc of history, E.O. Wilson would say this: people didn't used to talk about extinction. It wasn't part of our normal kind of lexicon. And at this moment, we also have extraordinarily robust new technology, right? Big data, remote sensing. It's providing a more robust platform and really much more rigorous insight for us to better understand and therefore care for our world. Now, we still have to start with a very deep understanding of species, all right? And it's the work of the HalfEarth Project to support more robust biodiversity discovery and monitoring. Right now, we understand and have a name for only about 20% of the species on our planet. We must expand this. We must encourage more exploration and discovery in order to refine and enhance our understanding of where and how species interact within ecosystems to support our lives. But having done that deep scientific study, we now have the technology that can kind of knit that information together, the deep information across a very complex ecosystem, the very complex ecosystems that make up our world, to really begin to understand that. The students of today who choose this career path will actually be the heroes of tomorrow. Those that study those 8 million species that we don't yet know. But it'll also be the big data that helps us to understand how they fit into ecosystems. If you imagine all the species on a flat two-dimensional piece of paper, and then you crumple that piece of paper up, that's how complicated their interrelationships are within ecosystems. And having this novel technology helps us to finally, in a way we never had before, really understand that, and therefore understand what we need to do to care for those ecosystems. And inevitably, our success in achieving a HalfEarth future will also be in the bridging of that science and the humanities. Our understanding of biodiversity and societies, including the insight of indigenous people who are the de facto original conservationists, who should be supported and protected, and also have unique insight on how to successfully achieve a HalfEarth future.
Thank you. So Paula, you mentioned that you are developing the HalfEarth Map. Can you give us more details about the map and what it is designed to accomplish?
Sure. So, you know, the first question raised after Ed wrote the book HalfEarth is, you know, which half? Like any great moonshot, the HalfEarth Project has a hardworking and passionate Apollo mission team that's working on that. Our partners at Yale and Visuality in Cambridge and in Madrid sit in a sort of Apollo control room with the data about species spread out before them, doing deep scientific analysis to provide leadership on which half. And then engineering a map, the HalfEarth Map, that engages people in why those places are special. We're also, of course, working with people who are advancing field and taxonomic research to better understand our little known planet, as Ed would call it, and how it can best be managed to protect life on Earth. So I invite you to take a look at the HalfEarth Project map. It's a high resolution, 3D, dynamic world map and decision support tool that guides where place-based species conservation activities are needed the most to save the bulk of Earth's species. The map integrates layers of high-resolution species information, including species to watch, with information about existing protection and human pressures, and highlights some of the most interesting biodiversity locations on Earth. Ultimately, with the goal of providing a decision-making tool for management of priority places for conservation, places where we have the best opportunity to protect the most species.
I want to tell everybody how to find the HalfEarth website. HalfEarth-org. Wanted to get that in there. It's in the chat room. I wanted to make sure that people have that also just in our conversation. You can access the map through there. So leading up to our discussion, Paula, you outlined driving research, scientific leadership, and engaging with people everywhere as the 3 pillars of your work at the HalfEarth Project. Can you expand on how you are bringing these pillars to life?
Sure. A big rudder of the HalfEarth Project, of course, comes from our scientific activities. That's the core, including the HalfEarth Project Map, which we've discussed, and our HalfEarth Chairs and Scholars Program. The HalfEarth Chairs and Scholars Program fosters the next generation of conservation scientists and leaders, supports biodiversity research, mentors scholars and next generation stewards, and provides a platform and an authentic voice for the socioeconomic needs and conservation priorities of regions around the world. Our first HalfEarth Chair and Scholar is Peter Nasrecki and Ricardo Guta, who are located in Gorongosa National Park in Mozambique, one of the globe's lost Edens that's been restored there through some of their work. Our HalfEarth Project Educator Ambassador Program also provides a platform for teachers to engage each other and their students in the grand ambition of HalfEarth and to inspire and connect students with the natural world. That's a very robust program. We're really relevant right now, where we have materials that allow teachers to engage with their students in order to create a deep, perpetual relationship and purpose-driven studies that allow these students to become and support those students to become our next generation stewards. We've also created several ways that people can affiliate their activities with the HalfEarth Project and for us to showcase how they're contributing to the goal of HalfEarth. Last fall at HalfEarth Day, businesses were nominated to be companies for a HalfEarth future, and these businesses are now contributing to a development of a framework for purpose-driven business practice that supports a HalfEarth future, and creating a catalog of best practice. These companies are really changing the way that we do business and leading the way in how to care for our planet. We also have some other groups, such as our Scientists for a HalfEarth Future, Communities for a HalfEarth Future, and Places for a HalfEarth Future, which are honoring both the individual and the collective leadership of scientists and communities that are really working to contribute to the goal of HalfEarth, and also offering an opportunity for them to convene and affiliate their activities with sort of a purpose-driven ambition of HalfEarth and the sustainable future of our planet. All these efforts come together on HalfEarth Day, which is our annual celebration, halfway between Earth Day and Earth Day, as an opportunity for scientists, conservationists, community representatives, decision makers, and educators to share their progress towards biodiversity conservation and inspire fresh energy and engagement. So the day brings together people from around the world and across disciplines to share their own unique perspectives and their thought leadership on how we can successfully ensure the health of our planet for future generations. The first HalfEarth Day was held in Washington, D.C. at National Geographic and on Capitol Hill and the Smithsonian. It was a very exciting way to engage with some of our political leaders and scientists around the goal of HalfEarth. And from there, we went on to New York City, where we celebrated HalfEarth Day at the American Museum of Natural History. Then last year at Berkeley, we celebrated out there, and bringing this message to different audiences each year, targeting different ways we can engage with people in these unique places. And our hope is that this fall, HalfEarth Day will be held in London, in England, to really begin to engage with the people who are on the streets, young people in particular, who are really concerned about the future of our planet and looking for a positive solution like this.
Thank you, Paula. So here we are in the middle of the COVID-19 crisis. You and I were discussing this prior to the recording started, what a strange time we are in. Could you speak to what we are learning from the COVID-19 pandemic that can help to advance the HalfEarth Project? And any other thoughts you might have would be so very welcome.
Oh, sure. No, thank you. I think, you know, one of the best ways we can care for our planet and achieve the goal of HalfEarth is to understand everything we can about the species of our planet and how they work together in ecosystems to support our lives. And we've been living in a time where science has sometimes been discounted or pushed aside. I think sometimes its complexity sows doubt, with uncertainty creating skepticism, rather than a keen desire to learn and study more. But one of the things that coronavirus has taught us is the extraordinary importance of deep science. A reverence for the important work of research scientists and the importance of collaboration and of sharing of that research in order to support our lives. And as I see people more fully engaging with that, it does make me hope that this could nudge a shift in paradigm that could have important consequences for how we think about our relationship to our planet and to each other, and really pushing us to renew our scientific inquiry and to collaborate to support a HalfEarth future. And so that's my first one hopeful paradigm shift, that I hope it makes us think about science and the importance of science in a different way that inevitably is the key, the backbone of the HalfEarth Project. The second thing I think we've found with the coronavirus is a new sense of awareness about the effect of illegal wildlife trade. Now, illegal wildlife trade was an already inherently unethical source of biodiversity loss. But with a new sense of awareness of how that illegal wildlife trade also affects the overall fabric of life. Illegal wildlife trade, the sale of that wildlife in wet markets is the possible source of the coronavirus, right? Those markets create an atmosphere that allows wildlife and humans to come in contact in a way that creates the potential for zoonotic disease that our immune systems are ill prepared to combat. And so we're now giving greater attention to, and this is great, enforcement of existing laws, regulations, and international treaties that deal with wildlife trade and markets. This is good, bringing that attention to that. And hopefully a new awareness is emerging that reinforces an underlying shift in consciousness, really humility about what we need to do to care for our planet as the only home we'll ever have. We should forever bear in mind that the beautiful world our species inherited took the biosphere 3.8 billion years to build. And the intricacy of its species we know only in part, and the way they work together to create a sustainable balance, we've only really begun to grasp. What Ed would say, as a quote from him, is, like it or not, and prepared or not, we are the mind and stewards of the living world. And so ultimately, our own ultimate future depends upon deepening that understanding and the adoption of a transcendent moral precept to do no harm to the rest of life. And I think that the coronavirus is in some ways sensitizing us to that. I was thinking about the popularity of scenes of animals roaming quarantine cities that seem to be going around on YouTube right now, and how the popularity of those videos really speaks to our inherent biophilia, our inherent connection with nature. And along with this, there also seems to be an underlying storyline, sort of a budding hope that the pandemic might change society for the better. Ed once said, humanity's passing through a bottleneck of overpopulation and environmental destruction. And at the end, if we pass through safely and take most of Earth's life forms with us, human existence could be a paradise compared to today. And so as we watch those YouTube videos, I wonder if people aren't thinking about that, about what life could be, which I guess is the third paradigm shift, that the coronavirus may allow us to do. You know, the civilization hasn't really ended. It's sort of like we're on a temporary furlough, you know, sent to our room by our parents for a long, hard think about what it is that has to be done. And I know it's a hard time, but I hope it'll also allow us the time to think about the important stuff, to imagine that life could be a paradise if we want it to be, right? And as Ed says in the book HalfEarth, to strive against odds on behalf of all life, to come together around the HalfEarth goal and solution for our planet would be humanity at its most noble.
Thank you, Paula. So what's next for the HalfEarth Project? What are people doing already? Anything you can describe? And for those who want to get involved, how can people get involved with the HalfEarth Project?
Well, the simplest and easiest way is to join us by taking the HalfEarth Pledge and going on our website and beginning to explore ways you can become more deeply involved in the programs that we've discussed. By taking the HalfEarth Pledge, you're becoming part of our community and saying that you support action to, or you want to take action to support species conservation, that you want to explore conservation priorities in your area and encourage your local representatives to support policies and conservation management. It also invites you to share information about the HalfEarth Project with your network, your friends, your family, and to participate in local conservation events, nature groups, and other things that allow you to contribute to our understanding of our planet. If you're a teacher, consider becoming a HalfEarth Project Educator Ambassador. If you're a science, consider joining your colleagues as a scientist for a HalfEarth future. We deeply honor the unique experience and expertise of everyone who would like to work with us to achieve the goal of HalfEarth.
Thank you so much, Paula. I want to ask you one more question, and then I'm going to turn to a question from the chat room, and I'll read it out loud. So as you know, I live in Baltimore and grow native wildflowers throughout the growing season, and I save and share them. My little garden community has become more and more biodiverse over these last few years. And these are things I get all excited about. Praying mantis egg sacs that I've never seen before, which I learned have like 300 of those little baby, praying mantises in them. Increasing numbers of bees, dragonflies, butterflies, moths, feeding, and more nesting birds. So my little wildlife garden isn't an Earth's, a biodiverse hotspot of the Earth. But in what way do wildlife gardens play a role in maintaining or increasing biodiversity, even if they're in cities?
Oh my goodness, no, cities are amongst the most important places where we need to be thinking about doing, managing these areas for conservation. While HalfEarth aspires to save half the Earth, it's going to be all kinds of places where effective species conservation can contribute towards that goal. And so the planting of seeds and wildflowers, our ability to nurture the habitats of species where they live, whether in cities, in parks, or in large landscapes, is crucially important. When we think about pollinators, which migrate, we need to be able to form those habitats in little places everywhere along corridors in order to support them to thrive in the long term. So it's wonderful what you're doing, and it's great where people can do that and really provide seeds, support natural habitats and native plants to inevitably strengthen and nurture the species who live in those habitats.
Thank you, Paula. I'm going to now ask a question from Amy, who's in the chat room. A lot of places in the developing world are protecting wildlife, including endangered species, but many of these protection programs are dependent on tourist dollars to pay rangers, for example. I have heard that with a lack of tourism, many of these programs will not be possible, and we will see the extinction of currently protected species.
Yeah, those are horrible stories. And I have read about that as well. You're right. One of the magic ways we've tried to conserve, protect places is, well, through socioeconomic development that happens through tourism. It's been a very easy way to talk to people about the value of protecting a place, as it inevitably drives economic, the economic support of not only the park, but the surrounding areas. And in this particular crisis right now, where people are no longer able to visit parks, it's harder than ever for that model for economic support of conservation to make very much sense. In addition to so I guess what I'm saying is we need to think about that. We need to think about other ways that we drive financial value to these parks in order to support them beyond that. But also the role of people are playing in making sure that that poachers aren't coming into these parks. There's only a limited number of rangers who can patrol them, and oftentimes it's the very visitors to the parks who are sort of becoming the second eyes that reduce that kind of poaching from occurring. And so it is in a really difficult time right now for some parks to keep up with poaching and prevent that from occurring. But it just goes to show you how important our visitation of the parks, in addition to our tourism dollars, are to ultimately keeping them thriving and supporting the rangers that are there as well.
Thank you, Paula. And now I have a question from the chat room from Sue Lenander. She's even given us her email. She does want to be in touch with you, but we can give this to you later. So this is what Sue says. I am the chair of the organizing committee for a Citizens Climate Assembly in Washington State this summer. Would someone from your agency consider presenting at the assembly to frame the HalfEarth concept? And I have her website and her email here, Paula, that I can get to you afterwards.
Well, absolutely. That's a very kind invitation. Thank you very much. We're, of course, happy to participate in your event and help to bring this campaign to the folks that you're convening there. That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Now, Paula, I have one more question for you. How is the HalfEarth Project proposing to protect pathways of creatures who migrate long distances, whether by air, sea, or land? And can you cite any examples?
Sure. So this goes back to what we were talking about where do we have the best opportunity to protect the most species? And that sounds very simple, maybe on its face. First, you have to know where all the species are, what their normal distribution is. And so it actually turns out to be quite complex. But then there's this additional layer, and that is how species may move in association with climate change, or how they may need to move in order to thrive into the future and in the right habitat, the right temperature that supports their lives and livelihoods. And so a critical component of the HalfEarth Project map is to make sure that we're monitoring species over time and showcasing habitat that is inevitably going to support the species of our planet. And one of the best ways that we can do that in terms of conservation management and conservation management policy is to create corridors. Corridors are areas, protected areas that are connected in a way that allows species to migrate in response to whatever challenges they're facing in association with climate change or other kinds of change. And so the creation of corridors is not uniquely and ambition of the HalfEarth Project. There are many extraordinarily wonderful corridor projects out there right now, but it is something that we can help to showcase uniquely on the HalfEarth Project map, and certainly use our voice in whatever way we can to promote the importance of corridors. Right now, for example, E.O. Wilson is a major sponsor of a Corridor Conservation Act that's in Congress. And so we're working to support and drive that forward in collaboration with other conservation folks that are working in the same space.
Paula, I appreciate all you shared with us today, and Diane invited me to ask a question.
Sure.
I studied with Murray Bookchin in the 80s, and there was at that time a conflict between the deep ecologists and the social ecologists over the idea of where humans' role in nature and their participation, with the social ecologists coming down on the side that we're all part of nature, so we need to not necessarily push nature out as just this thing that's separate from us and to preserve in isolation. So I feel like there's a little bit of that coming up for me in this conversation. Also, I got a chat about this concept of creating this perfect world that also relates to Indigenous leadership. Now, we've noticed in the Pacific Northwest and elsewhere around the world, obviously, that in terms of living in balance in a sustainable way with our environment and taking care of our place over the long term, that Indigenous leadership has been absolutely essential. And Indigenous concepts of development are very different than neo-colonial or colonial concepts of development or preservation. So I'm wondering if the HalfEarth Project is engaged in any conversations with Indigenous leadership or inviting in Indigenous leadership, so that HalfEarth is also in a process of learning to frame and approach these things in an perhaps a decolonized perspective, or what are you learning from Indigenous leadership, and how much is HalfEarth Project actively inviting in and sharing leadership with Indigenous wisdom and Indigenous people? Check.
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing that up, and give me the opportunity to highlight the ways we're trying to work on that right now. Absolutely. I know when people first hear HalfEarth, sometimes they imagine this barbed wire down around the planet, people on one side and nature on the other side. And in fact, the model that the Indigenous people provide us for how to live sustainably with nature is extraordinarily important to the HalfEarth Project and everything that we're trying to do. One thing I'd like to emphasize is that when we talk about HalfEarth, we're talking about how we can best manage places for conservation. And that includes places where people are already sustainably living in balance with nature, and in particular, in these Indigenous communities you referred to. And at the second HalfEarth Day in New York City, we actually brought in and had in place, had at HalfEarth Day, conservation leaders from around the world, the American Indians, or the American Indian population in the US and Canada. We had folks from the Amazon that came up, and they all talked about different ways and provided information about how they were working in their communities to try to drive forward a HalfEarth future. What we were really trying to do is to make sure that there was that voice in the room, that we honored, respected, and showcased it. And we continue to try to do that in the way that we think about and engage people in diverse habitats around the world. So I appreciate you bringing that up and allowing me the chance to highlight that, because it is a big concern of ours. And I understand what you're saying, that oftentimes it's tricky to talk about conservation, at least historically, without getting some sense that people would be displaced. But as Ed's written about this, and as we've tried to bring it to life, we're very much focused on how to do that in a way that sustainably supports people wherever they are, and to manage areas for conservation in ways that don't inevitably displace people, and also honor their own unique understanding of how to live sustainably on the planet.
Thank you.
So, Paula Ehrlich, you've been so kind. You have devoted an hour of your busy schedule to us, and Earth Day's coming up in 2 days. So we imagine that you all have a full week, even in quarantine at HalfEarth Project. So on behalf of everybody, I want to thank you very much. Before we close, could you give us any closing comments, remind us where to find information, any final thoughts?
Well, thank you very much for giving us a voice in this forum and having the opportunity to reach people within your network. I hope that you will continue to share news about the HalfEarth Project amongst your communities and networks and families. Our website is on the screen now, and you can visit us at halfearthproject.org. We also talked about signing the HalfEarth Pledge, and if you'd like to sign the pledge and learn more, there's also a link there for the HalfEarth Pledge at our website /pledge. That'll allow you to connect with our community and receive email updates about all the things that we have on the go. And we welcome everyone who'd like to join us in creating a HalfEarth future. It's great to have the opportunity to spend time with all of you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Again, Dr. Paula Ehrlich, thank you for taking the time to be with us, and thank you everybody else for being with us today in this interview. Stay safe, stay home, and stay healthy, everybody. Bye-bye now.